We begin today the Gemara on Daf Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph, right at the beginning, the top line of the Yomot. Keitzad Mecheres. So this Mishnah, or this Gemara here, is in connection to what we learned before in the Gemara regarding a widow that is selling the properties of her husband in order to get mezainis, to be fed. One of the conditions of Kesubos, while she's an almana, she has to get fed. So she has to sell properties from her husband in order to get money to buy herself food. So Keitzad Mecheres. How does she sell these properties? Meaning she has to get fed today. So what is she going to do? She's going to take a little inch of the property and sell, and then another inch for tomorrow, another inch for tomorrow. Of course, that's not going to work. We have to allow her to sell a certain portion of a property for a certain period of time so she can sell like a mensch and make money to be able to feed herself. But the question is, for how long of a period of time do we allow her to sell in advance? Omer Rav Daniel barav Katine. Once in 12 months, she sells a property size large enough to make her money for what she needs to feed herself for 12 months. But now, this buyer that's paying for this property doesn't pay her all the money at once in advance that she'll have 12 months to feed herself in advance, but rather he gives her the payment for the property she sold once in 30 days. The reason is, as Rashi explains, what happens if she goes and gets remarried to someone else? Now she doesn't get fed anymore. So the Lekeach doesn't pay the money for the property to her. The Lekeach will pay the Yarshim. So therefore he doesn't pay her all the money in advance. He pays her once in 30 days. Rav Yudah says, Mecheres l'shisha chadashim, she can sell a property the size large enough to make her money for what she needs to feed herself only for 6 months. And for Lekech mefarnes achas l'shleishim yom, and like we said, the Lekech will pay her once in 30 days, so that if she gets married to someone else, then they'll pay the rest to the Yarshim. Tanya Kava said that Rav Hone, in one brayse we learned like Rav Hone, the brayse says, Mecheres l'shnei masa chaydesh, she can sell once in 12 months, v'lekech mefarnes achas l'shleishim yom, and the buyer will pay once in 30 days for her food. Tanya Kava said that Rav Yehuda, but in another brayse we learned like Rav Yehuda, Mecheres l'shisha chadashim, she sells once in 6 months, v'lekech mefarnes achas l'shleishim yom, and the buyer will pay once in 30 days for her. Amar Ameimer. So Ameimer said regarding this machlokes, Hilchase, the halacha is Mecheres l'shisha chadashim. She sells once in 6 months. V'lekeach mefarnes achas l'shleishim yom, and the buyer will pay once in 30 days. Amar le Rav Ashi la Ameimer. So Rav Ashi asks Ameimer, "Did Rav Huna mai? What's with Rav Huna's opinion? Why are you paskening like Rav Yehuda? Are you ignoring what Rav Huna said?" Amalei. So Ameimer answers, "Lo shmieli," which simply means I didn't hear what Rav Huna said. The Gemara explains what that means. Kloimar loy svirili, meaning to say, Ameimer said, I don't hold of what he said. To say that you can sell for once in 12 months, that's too much. There's no reason to say she could sell for so much. Once in 6 months, that's good enough. The question was asked from Rav Sheshes as follows. So this almana, going back to the story we're speaking about over here, an almana, what does she have? What's her rights to collect? If she's selling a property from her husband, what rights does she have? One thing is, as we're speaking about now, which is regarding mezainis. She's selling properties in order to have food. But then there's something else, of course, which is she wants to collect money for her kesubos. So now the question is, what happens? Mecheres le-mezainis. She sold a property her husband had to get money to feed herself. But now she comes back and she wants to get her kesubos money, and there's nothing else, there's no other property her husband has to collect for the kesubos. So what does she want to do? Could she go back to the buyer of this property and say, yeah, I sold you this property, and you owe me the money for the mezainis, but now I'm confiscating the property itself from you because my husband, which this property was owned by, there was a lien on this property even before I sold it to you for my kesubos. So now you're going to have to pay me for this property, and additionally I'm confiscating it from you for my kesubos. So what's the question? Why should she be allowed to do such a thing? So the Gemara says, the basis of this question is based on what Rav Yosef once said. Rav Yosef said as follows: Ar malte de zavin, an almana that sells properties for her mezainis to get fed to someone. So what happens if now that property is being confiscated from the buyer? Some Bal Chayiv comes along, some lender comes along and says, this property, the husband, the person that passed away, he owed me money, and he comes and he confiscates that property. Achrayes ayasmi, who's the one that takes responsibility to reimburse the buyer? It's the Yisaimim, it's the Yarshim, not the she that sold it for the purpose of her mezainis. That doesn't, even though she's the one that sold it for her mezainis, but it doesn't matter. The Yisayimim, the Yarshim, they're the ones that have to reimburse this buyer for the property that was confiscated from him. And similar, Obeidina Dezavin, a bezdin that sold a property in this situation for the purpose of the mezainis for this woman. So achrayis hayasmi. If it gets confiscated, the responsibility of that goes on the Yarshim, on the Yisayimim. That's the statement that Rav Yosef said. So now the question is, what's going to be the halacha if the one that wants to not come and confiscate this property is the almana herself for her ksubah? Do I say, Kivan dachrayis ayasmi, since it's this responsibility when you confiscate this property goes back to the Yisayimim, so tarfa, she can come and grab this property. It's the Yisayimim, it's the Yarshim that owe her the ksubah, right? Whatever they inherit, so she gets from that inheritance the ksubah. So therefore, since it's their responsibility, so she's going to collect this karka for her ksubah, and then they're going to take care of it. They have to reimburse this. Or perhaps if she herself is coming to confiscate this property that she sold, that she has to take responsibility for. It does not go back to the Yisayimim. Matzi Omri law, the buyers can say to her, yes, it's true that if there's any responsibility that will have to be taken for this property being confiscated that comes from some other Baal Chayv that comes to collect this property, that you don't have to accept upon yourself. That goes back to the Yisayimim. But achrayis de nafsheich, taking responsibility for yourself. If you yourself are coming to confiscate this property, you're the seller. You sold it for yourself to get mezainis, and now you yourself are coming to confiscate this property. Mi loy kibule kabilis. Did you not accept to reimburse? In other words, you don't have the ability to come and just collect this property that you sold for the ksubah, and now the Yisayimim will have to take care of this. That's the shayla here. Amalei or Amalahu. So he answers, Rav Sheshes answers and says, Tenisua. We learned this in a brayse. It says mecheres v'heleches. She can go and sell the properties at kedei ksubasa. She's selling properties for the mezainis that she needs. So you sell properties, but you have to leave over for yourself the amount of the ksubah that you still have to collect. That you have to leave. And v'sam smach lo shetikba ksubasa min ashar. And that's what she can rely upon. She'll rely on the remainder of the properties that she doesn't sell for the mezainis. That's where she'll collect her ksubah from there. So Shmami, no, what is the Braisa telling you? You see here in this Braisa, Shaira in, if she's going to leave over for her ksubah, that she can collect from there. But loy Shaira loy, if she does not leave over for her ksubah, those properties that she sold for the mezainis, she can't go back to the buyers and confiscate that for her ksubah. Says the Gemara, how do you know that that's what the Braisa means? Vidilme, perhaps the Braisa is saying that she should leave over for her ksubah. Maybe it's just giving her good advice. Even if she did sell all of the properties, she will be able to go back to those properties and confiscate them. But it's just giving good advice not to do so. Why? She doesn't want to get a name that people will say, here, this is a person that sells and retracts her sales. She comes, she sells, she confiscates the next day. She doesn't want to get a bad name. So it's giving her just good advice. Don't do this. Maybe that's what the Braisa means. But the Gemara doesn't accept this because it says, Im kain, if so, lisni goivik subasa menashar. It would be enough if the Braisa would just say that you leave yourself over, and then she could collect the ksubah from the rest, from the remainder. Why does the Braisa add again and say, smach lo? That now, this that you leave over, this is what you rely upon. Shmam, the reason why the Braisa is saying that again, it's emphasizing that shaira in, loy shaira loy. Whatever remainder there is, that's where she can collect the ksubah from. If there's no remainder, she cannot collect the ksubah from what she already sold for the mezainis. Another question was asked, since we're talking about retracting a sale. So the Gemara brings up another question, which is not regarding the ksubah, but b'chlal, a shayla b'negeta, a person that sells. Zavin, a person sells, so he sold whatever properties he was selling because he needed money. And then it turns out that he does not need his money. So he's not interested really in the whole sale. Hadri zvini, could he retract from the sale? Or he cannot retract from the sale. So now this question of the Gemara is only speaking about a very specific case. So Rashi says, we're speaking about a situation where even if the seller didn't make it clear, didn't say a word of why he's selling, but everybody knows. It was a known fact that he's only selling for a specific reason because he needed money for something. Whether he needed money he was poor, or he needed money because there was a very specific investment that he wanted to make, and therefore he needed that money. And then it turns out that that whole investment falls through and he doesn't need the money anymore. So this is something which is known to everybody. Reason that what Rashi is saying this is because usually we have the rule Dvarim Shabbalei Veinim Dvarim. If you sell and you have a reason for the sale, and then that reason is not needed anymore, you can't retract. It's Dvarim Shebelev. Taisus over here goes a step further than Rashi. Taisus over here says that not only is something which everybody knows, but he had to have said something clearly. The Gemara is speaking about a case where the person at the time of the sale says, by the way, you know why I'm selling? I'm selling because I need the money for this investment. He said it clearly. So why is, if he said it clearly, so why is there a question? Because he never made it a clear stipulation in the sale. It's not a condition. If you make an actual condition in the sale itself, and you make the condition properly, the way you're supposed to make a condition, we learned before once, you make a condition like B'nai Gad, B'nai Reuven, so then that condition will obviously stop the sale if the conditions are not met. But over here, he just let him know, he spoke about it, but he didn't make it as a condition. So that's the question, if he can retract from the sale. Tashema, the Gemara says, I'll prove this to you. Dahu Gavre, there was a story with an individual, the Zavanara, he sold a property, to Rav Papa, the Yitzrich Zuzi, because he needed money, Lemizban Turi, because he had these oxes that he wanted to buy, and that's why he was selling the properties for this purpose. Saif, in the end, what happened? He didn't need them. So the whole reason for the money that he sold the properties for, this was not relevant anymore. Rav Papa returned the properties that he bought to this person, and the sale went back. So we see here that in such a situation that if he doesn't need the money, the sale goes back. Says the Gemara, there's no raya from here. Rav Papa lefnim mishuras adinu dav. We could say that what Rav Papa did is not al pi halacha that you must retract from the sale, but it's just he did it beyond the letter of the law. But the Gemara brings another case. Tashema, bring your raya. Dahu batzart dahav ben Nerda. There was a situation in Nerda that there was a hunger. They had no wheat to eat, and so what happens? Zavninu kula alma la padnayu. So everybody was selling their homes just to buy themselves some food. The food was so expensive, and everyone was selling their homes for food. But then the Saif, in the end, asachiti, a new shipment, a big shipment of grain arrived to the city, and now the sale of the homes, people wanted to have back their homes. Rav Nachman said, Dinu, the halacha. So here the Gemara is emphasizing Dina. This is not Lefnim Mishuras Adin, but this is the halacha, the Hadri Apadni Lemarayu. That these houses or these palaces that he was selling goes back to their owners, because it's clear that they were not interested in selling their homes. They were only selling it for the food. So this is a raya to this point. Then when it's clear what they were selling it for, so then it goes back. So the Gemara says, Lav Dafka, there's a raya from there. Why? Hasam Nami Zivini B'Tos Havo. Over there, the entire sale, even at the time of the sale itself, there was something that they weren't aware of. It was a complete mistake. Why? Because the Igloi Milsa, because it turns out the Arve Bi'ikula V'Kaime, the ship that was carrying this grain that was on the way to Nerda, was already there. It was right near the city. It was just stuck on the way. And they weren't aware that that shipment of wheat is already there. And therefore, at the time of the actual sale itself, the wheat was already really there for them. So maybe this is not the same to the situation that we spoke about before. During the time of the sale itself, the person actually needed the money. After the sale, something changes, and then he doesn't need the money anymore. Maybe that's different. Maybe that's a new development that happens after the sale. But over here, while the sale was taking place, the shipment was already there. Says the Gemara, according to Rashi, this is a continuation, and the Gemara brings a raya to this. Ihachi, now that you give this answer, if so, Haine de Amalei Rami Bashmul Rav Nachman. This explains this conversation there with Rami Bashmul and Rav Nachman. So Rami Bashmul says to him, Im Kain, if you're going to say in this case that they were selling their homes for food, that after the fact that they find that they have the food, so then the sales of the homes goes back. Im Kain, Im Tzeis Samachshil and Lasad Lavi. For the future, this is going to cause a problem. Why? Because in the future, if there's going to be a situation of a hunger, and people are going to be desperate for food, and they're going to want to sell their homes to be able to buy themselves food, no one's going to want to buy the homes from them. People are going to say, look what happened in the past. We bought these homes, and then the whole sale just went back. So what's going to be if such a thing happens in the future? Amalei. So Rav Nachman says, why are you concerned? This situation of having this hunger in this place, Nerda, is this something which is so common that you're concerned that it could happen again in the future? Amalei, so Rami Bashmul says to Rav Nachman, yes, but this kind of situation where you have this hunger in this situation, what does it mean in this situation? The way we just explained in the answer, that the shipment of grain was really on its way, or even there, very close to the city, but it just sort of got stuck on its way and it didn't make it into the city. This kind of situation is something which is common. Right, so therefore, this is according to Rashi. This is the raya that the Gemara is bringing. That's what the situation was over there. Because Rami Bar Shmuel is saying that this is something which is common. It's not common that there should be a hunger and that there should be no grain available at all. But it is common that the shipment arrives and it gets stuck on its way and it doesn't enter into the city on time. So this, he says, you should be concerned for. That was the question that he asked him. So this is a raya to the answer we gave before. So the Gemara concludes, the halacha regarding this question is, Zavin v'lo yitzrich le'zuzi. A person sells, and it's clear what the sale was for, why he needed the money, and then it turns out that he does not need this money, even if it's a development that comes up later after the sale. Hadri zvini, we go back from the sale, like the Gemara, the simple pshat of the Raya, the Gemara brought in this story here that it goes back from the sale.
The last story.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Zok Heilige Mishneh, Almana, going back to the halacha of an Almana selling properties from the husband in order to get herself food. So Almana, Beimena Edison, Beimena Nesuin. An Almana, she whether she's an Almana from Edison or there's an Almana from Nesuin. So actually the difference between them is only the Almana after full marriage, Nesuin, is has the right to get fed from her husband. That's when the condition that she gets fed applies. If she's only an almana min edison, she was never fully married, she still was living with her parents, so then she gets no food. If she's selling properties, what is she selling it for? To collect ksubah, not to collect food. But the Mishnah says, the Tanakama here says, whether she's selling properties after edison, in other words, for the purpose of collecting ksubah, whether she's selling properties after nisuin for the purpose of collecting food, she can sell even without having a proper evaluation from a bezdin regarding the value of the properties. Rab Shimon says, if it's after full marriage, now she's selling for food, she can sell shaloi bebezdin without a bezdin. And the reason for this is, as Rashi explains, because if she needs food, she can't wait for bezdin to come and evaluate and for it to sell. She needs food now. She needs food today. So therefore we allow her to sell without a bezdin. But if she's selling after Edison just for the purpose of collecting the ksubah, so then loy timker ela bebezdin. So then we say that you have time to wait for this. Let her wait until bezdin will come and evaluate the properties. Mipnei she'ein la mezainis, because in the case of Edison she doesn't get fed, only for the ksubah. Chol she'ein la mezainis. Anytime she doesn't get any mizainis, leitimker ela bebezdin, she could only sell in a bezdin. This is an extra line here, sort of in the Mishnah, which the Gemara will explain what this extra line is saying. That again, the Gemara sort of repeats again that if whatever she's selling is not for the purpose of mizainis, only for the ksubah, so then she does not sell in the bezdin with a bezdin. Again, she does not sell only with a bezdin. Talk to Gemara. The Gemara will explain now the opinion of the Tanakama. The Tanakama says whether she's selling after Nisuin and she can collect mezainis, whether she's collecting the ksubah, she can sell without a bezdin. So we understand if she's selling after full marriage, so therefore mishum mezaini, if she's collecting the mezainis food, so therefore she can collect without a bezdin. Element Edison, but after Edison, when she's only collecting a ksubah. So my time, why is it that Chachamim did not say that she has to come to a bezdin and sell properly, just like any person that comes to collect a property, you want to confiscate a property from someone to collect a loan, you can't just sell it without a bezdin. It has to be a proper evaluation. I says, my time, why doesn't she need a bezdin here? Ola explains, Mishum china. The reason is we want the husband to find favor in these women's eyes. If he wants to get married, and women see that when she becomes a widow, she's going to be stuck and she's going to have to go through a whole hassle going to bezdin to get her ksubah. What a hassle. So she's not interested in this. She says, I have no security in this. So she's not interested in getting married. So in order that women should see that if she'll need a ksubah, it'll be very easy for her. She can go, sell the property and get a ksubah. So like this, the husband will find favor in a woman's eyes to get married. That's the reason of Ula. Rabbi Yechanan says, that this is the desire of the husband. When he marries his wife and he makes the agreement, of the ksubah, the tnai bezdin of ksubah, it's the husband's desire that his wife should have the right, more than any person that a loan is owed to. His wife is not just any person collecting a loan. His wife, he doesn't want it to be embarrassed in the bezdin to go through the whole hassle, and she should be able to collect without this hassle. My benayu. What's the difference between Ola's opinion and Rabbi Yechanan's opinion? Ikke benayu. The difference would be grusha in a case where she's divorced and she's collecting a ksubah after divorce. According to the opinion that says that we want that women should be able to collect ksubah without any hassle, because otherwise the husband won't find favor in the women's eyes to get married. So grusha nami bayechein. We need this also in the situation of a grusha. You want all women to see anytime she has to collect a ksubah, whether it's after a divorce or after she becomes an almana, she won't have a hard time. So that applies even if she's a grusha. So nami bayechein. But according to the opinion that this is the desire of the husband, that he does not want his wife to be embarrassed to go through the hassle in a bezdin, grusha leichpaslei. That only applies to an almana when she becomes an almana if he passed away, but not if he divorced her. If he divorced her, he doesn't care for her embarrassment, and therefore in such a case, she will have to go to a bezdin. Tanam, we learned in a Mishnah, this is actually the next Mishnah right over here on the Amod. So it says, the grusha leitimker ela bebezdin. That a grusha, she was divorced and she's selling her ksubah, she's selling the properties, that is, to collect her ksubah. So the Mishnah there says that she should sell only in a bezdin. So here the Mishnah clearly says only in a bezdin. So this is understood according to the opinion that says the reason why she can sell without a bezdin, because that's the husband's desire, that she should not get embarrassed. So as we just explained, but if he divorced his wife, so then he doesn't care for her. So in such a case, she will have to sell only in bezdin. But if it's the reason that we want women to see and know that no matter what the situation is that she's collecting a ksubah, she will not have to go through a hassle, she'll be able to easily sell. So grusha nami boyechein. That applies even in a case of a grusha. We want all women to see that there's a chen, that she should be able to collect the ksubah easily. So why does the Mishnah say that a grusha has to sell only in a bezdin? That says the Gemara, Hamani Rab Shimoni. That Mishnah later that says this is going according to Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon Bechlal says whenever you collect, or whenever you sell, that is, you sell the properties only to collect ksubah, you have to do it in a bezdin. Right? Only for mezainis do you not need a bezdin, but for a ksubah you do need a bezdin. So that Mishnah which says that a gerusha has to sell only in the bezdin, that's Rab Shimon's opinion. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, how could that be? Rab Shimon, you're saying that this is Rab Shimon speaking, but Atani le Reisha. Rab Shimon already made clear his opinion in the Reisha regarding any situation where you're not collecting mezainis. Mina edisin lo timker ela bebezdin. That if she's her husband passed away after Edison, so she has no right for mezainis, only for ksubah, so she has to sell in a bezdin. So the same thing is regarding a grusha. It's just another example of a woman that's only collecting a ksubah and not collecting mezainis. Why would the Mishnah have to say the same concept again according to Rab Shimon? Says the Gemara, you're right, we have over here two situations of a woman that collects only ksubah and not mezainis. One is an almana from Edison, and another one is a grusha, and they're not exactly the same. Mao the Teime, I would think to say, Almana min Edison, who the nafesh chen dida. When it comes to an almana of Edison, she never lived with her husband, she never had any marital relations with her. So over there, when women see that she's not being treated so well, that won't make such a bad impression on women. Because women will say, listen, of course she's not being treated so well. She never had any major closeness to her husband. So over there, in such a situation, that's why Rab Shimon said that we don't have to allow her to sell without a bezdin. But avol grusha the nafesh chendi a grusha that was fully married, lived with her husband 100%, and now her husband divorces her and puts her in a situation where she has to go through such a hassle. Maybe over here, even Rab Shimon would agree that over here she does have to be allowed to sell without a bezdin. So all the women should see that she's being treated like a mensch after a full marriage. So therefore, I have to have this extra mishnah to teach me that not only almana mina edison, but also after a divorce, Rab Shimon still says that we don't allow her to sell without a bezdin. But ha nami tanina. Seemingly, this as well, this that she's collecting her ksubah after a divorce, we also already clearly see that Rab Shimon says that she could only sell in a bezdin. Why? Because here's the extra line that we had in the Mishnah. What did Rab Shimon say? Kol she'ein la mezainis. After Rab Shimon says that an almana from Edison could sell only in a bezdin, Rab Shimon adds another line. Kol she'ein la mezainis. In any situation where she's not collecting mezainis, she could only sell in a bezdin. La suya mai. What is that extra line coming to add? Lav la suye. Don't you think it's coming to add grusha? That not only an almana from Edison that gets no mezainis, but also the grusha that doesn't get any mezainis also has to sell only in a bezin. So what do we need? This other line in the next Mishnah here that says that a grusha sells only in a bezin. So the Gemara answers, loy. That's not the pshat in the extra line we had in the previous Mishnah. Rather, la asuye mugureshes ve'ena mugureshes. That Mishnah is coming to speak about and tell me the halacha regarding a woman which is divorced but not divorced, which basically means a woman where there's a suffix if the divorce took effect. The classical case for that would be when the husband throws the get to his wife, and it's a suffix if the get landed closer to him or closer to her. So if it's a suffix whether she's divorced or not, so what's the halacha? Like Rab Zayda said, the Amr Rab Zayda said, Kol makom she'amru megureshes ve'ena megureshes. Anytime it says that, anytime the halacha is that it's a suffix if she's divorced or not, so Baal chayev mezainisah. The husband still has to feed her. If he's still alive, he still has to feed her because it's a suffix whether she's divorced or not, so he has to feed her. But this is only in the lifetime of the husband. He has to feed her because she can't get remarried because of him. She's stuck because of him. If it's a suffix, she's an Ashes Ish. So because she's stuck because of him, the husband still has to feed her. But as Rashi explains, what the Gemara is saying over here is, what happens after the husband passes away? And now there was a suffix if she was Megereshes or not. Over here, she does not get mezainis from the children. She can't come and say, maybe I was not mugereshes, and therefore I'm an almana, and if an almana, you have to give me the food. Because she could anyways go and get remarried. She's not stuck because of the husband anymore. So over here, in such a situation, she does not get any mezainis. So this Mishnah, according to Rashi, the pshat over here is, this extra line in the Mishnah when it said, Kol she'ein lo mezainis, it's derech agav teaching me this halacha, that when she's safek mugereshes, that she will not get mezainis. And therefore, if she does not get mezainis, she does not collect it, or she cannot sell the properties in the bezdin. Tashema, the Gemara tries to bring another raya over here, this machlokes between Ulla and Rabbi Yochanan. What's the reason why we don't require a wife that's selling the properties, even for the ksubah, to come into the bezdin? So the Gemara brings that it says in the Braisa, Kishem shemicheres shaloi bebezdin, just like she herself, this almana, she can sell the properties without a bezdin, kach yersheh Kesubos, so too, even if she passed away and now her inheritors are coming in and selling the properties to the collected ksubah, moichem shalei bebezdin, they could also sell without a bezdin. So the Gemara now explains, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says that a husband does not want his wife to be embarrassed in a bezdin, to go through the whole hassle. So I can say the same thing. Just like he doesn't want his wife to get embarrassed in bezdin, the disbazi, that she should get embarrassed in bezdin, he also doesn't want that her inheritors, which may even be his own children, that they should be embarrassed in the bezdin, or even if it's her children, he doesn't want them to go through this hassle. So that's understood why even the Yershim don't have to sell in the bezdin. But according to the opinion that says the only reason that we don't require a wife to come and sell in bezdin is because we want all women to see that it'll be easy for her to collect the ksubah. So my cheinike over here, if she passed away and now it's the children that are inheriting over here, what chein is that? Why would for women to see that the inheritors have to go through this hassle? How would that affect them? The point is that they should feel the security that they can get married because they won't have to go through a hassle. But over here, it's not anymore this woman. It's just the inheritors. Why is that relevant? So the Gemara says, again, my chen ikke. What issue of chen is there over here? And so the Gemara Tirgama Ola, according to his opinion, explained and says, Kagoin sheyarsha bita eyachaisa. The situation over here is that who is her inheritors? Also a woman, either her daughter or her sister. So therefore, for them, they want to get married. If they have to go through this hassle to collect the ksubah, they'll think to themselves and say, why should we go and get married to any man that we see might be abusive and then one day might divorce or we might become a widow, and now we're gonna be stuck just like we are in the situation we're in now. So therefore, for them, again, what?
Now they're yours.
And a chanami, but the very fact that they're experiencing this hassle will deter them from wanting to go get married. So therefore, Chacham will masakin that even for the Yershim as well, you should not have to go to a bezdin to collect the ksubah. So the Mishnah, continuing this halacha here regarding selling the properties of the husband in order to collect the ksubah. So we had before, just before we learned the Mishnah inside, we had the rule before regarding ksubah. So first of all, we're speaking over here about whether you have to sell in bezdin or not. But another important point for this Mishnah is, once you collect the ksubah, you don't get mezainis anymore. Right? All mezainis is until the collection of the ksubah. So now, machra, ksubasa, ay miksasa. If she sold for the ksube, the properties, either she sold fully, she fully collected the property for the ksube from the properties she sold, or miksasa, only she sold and collected part of the ksube. Mishkana ksubasa, she gave the properties of her husband as a collateral in order to be able to collect for her ksube, or miksasa, or only part of the ksube. Nasna ksubasa lacher, she already gave the gift of the ksube that she's collecting as a gift to someone else, or miksasa, or only part of it she collected and gave as a gift to someone else. So even after she collected only part of her ksube, loy timkoir es hashar, not to sell the rest of the properties, she cannot sell ela bebezdin, only in the bezdin. Okay, so this, as Rashi explains, we'll see in the Gemara as well, this is according to Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says that that only for mezainis are you allowed to sell without a bezdin. But if you're not selling for mezainis, you cannot sell without a bezdin. So the chiddush that Rab Shimon is saying over here is that once she collected and she sold part of the properties for the ksube, so now she has no mezainis anymore. So therefore she can't sell without a bezdin. The Chachamim and the Chachamim say, she can continue selling the properties of her husband 4 or 5 times until she gets the full collection of her ksube, and she can sell it even without a bezdin, right? Because according to the Chachamim, even without a bezdin, you could sell for the ksube. She can sell for the mezainis. She can continue selling the properties for her mezainis, and shaloi bebezdin, even without a bezdin. Even though she already collected part of the ksube, and so nevertheless she can continue selling without a bezdin. The Kesubos, okay, a second. This thing of mecheres l'mezainis is not speaking in this situation where she already sold part of the properties for a ksube, or she already collected the ksube. But mecheres l'mezainis shaloi bebezdin is a separate thing. She sells the properties for her mezainis without a bezdin. The Kesubos l'mezainis macharti. When she's selling the properties for her mezainis, she should specify. She should write clearly that I sold these properties for the purpose to collect my mezainis. This was quoted in the Gemara before. And there was a discussion in the Gemara why she has to write this. And the conclusion of the Gemara before is that the only reason she has to write that she's selling it for mezainis is just giving her good advice, because people should know exactly what she's selling for a ksube and what she's selling for food. If people will think that she's selling all of these properties for mezainis, people will say, wow, she's selling so much properties just for her food. How much does she have to eat? So therefore she should write exactly what it is that she's selling for the mezainis. Then the Mishnah concludes with the line that we already discussed before in the Gemara: "Ugrusha letimker ela bebezdin." If she got divorced, she should only sell in bezdin. So the Gemara masnisim mani. Who is our Mishnah? Rab Shimoni. This is according to Rab Shimon. The Tanya, as we learned in the Brayos, Rab Shimon says machra ksubasa. If she sold the ksube, she got collected the ksube. Mishkana ksubasa. So, or if she put up her ksube for collateral to collect, or put up the properties for collateral to collect the ksube. Asasa ksubasa apaytekila acher. Or she says to someone that she owes money to, here, right over here, from this place that I'm owed the ksube, is an apayteki, meaning you could collect from here the loan. Ein la mezainis. So after she already sold and collected completely her ksube, then she gets no mezainis. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. But Rab Shimon says, like we saw in our Mishnah, even if she didn't collect fully the ksube, but only half or part of the ksube of the mezainis. She already got she collected part of her ksube, she can't get any mezainis anymore. So here, this is the machlokes, at what point does she lose her ksube? Rab Meir, Tanakama says only if she completed the collection of her ksube, and Rab Shimon says even if she collected part of her ksube, she can't anymore get fed from the food, the mezainis. Says the Gemara, Lememre, shall we say that Rab Shimon's opinion is the loyam rinon mixas kesef kechol kesef. We do not consider the part of the money of the ksube to be like all of the money of the ksube. Right? So therefore, according to Rab Shimon, if she's only owed part of the ksube, it's not like she's being owed the full ksube. When she's owed the full ksube, she still gets mezainis. If she's owed only part of the ksube, she doesn't get mezainis anymore. So he doesn't compare a part of the money being owed to her like when the full money of the ksube being owed to her. And that's why she loses the mezainis. Rabbanan Savri, but the Rabbanan, which is Rab Meir, so their opinion is Amrina mixes kesef v'chol kesef. If it's only part of the money that she's being owed for the ksube, it's like the same that she was owed the entire ksube, and therefore she still could collect her mezainis. That's what it seems like the argument of here is. So this is a machlekes regarding the money. matter, but the Gemara here will say that this is basically a general question. When there's a partial, is it like the full? And when she's owed partially the money of the Kesubos is like the full owing of the money, and therefore she doesn't get her mezainis. So let's see. The Gemara says, but this concept of miktsas we find in another completely different case. But ha'ipcha shamin luhu. We see a machlokes between Rab Meir and Rab Shimon, and over there their opinions is the opposite. Tanya and a brayso we learned regarding the halacha of a kohen gadol, that a kohen gadol should only marry a besula. So the brayso says, the pasuk says, v'hu isha b'fsuleha, that a kohen gadol marries a woman only that's a besula. She has to be a psula. So now the question is, does she have to be a complete psula, only a partial psula? Prat lebegeres. So Rav Meir says this comes to exclude a begeres. A begeres is after she's 12 and a half, and when she matures, so part of a psulim is not there anymore. Shekalu besuleh, so she's not completely a besula anymore. Divrei Rav Meir. This is Rav Meir's opinion. So what do we see here? What does Rav Meir say? That she has to be a full psula. Rabbi Lazar, Rab Shimon, machshirim bebegeres. But Rabbi Lazar and Rab Shimon say that even a begeres, which is not a full psula anymore, after she matures, she's only a partial psula, the kohen gadol could still marry her. So over here, we see that their opinions are the opposite. When it comes to the requirement of a besula, it's Rab Meir that says that if she's only a partial psula, it's not good enough. We compare miktsas besula to she has to be a complete psula, right? And what does Rab Shimon say? That if she's a begeres, even she's only a partial psula, that's good enough. That's just like a full psula. Again, so Rab Meir says we don't compare a partial psula to a full psula, and Rab Shimon says we do. And before, when it came to the money, it was the other way around. Rab Shimon is the one that said that we don't compare part of the ksuba being owed to her to the full ksuba being owed to her. And over here, and Rab Meir says that we do compare part of the ksuba being owed to her to the full ksuba. So that's the question. Miktsas. Do we compare miktsas to the full or not? Says the Gemara, you can't compare to that question regarding the besula by a kohen gadol. Why? Because Hasam bekroi pligi. Over there, the basis of the argument between Rab Meir and Rab Shimon is really in the word in the pasuk. The pasuk says bivsuleha. The question is, what do you learn from this pasuk? Rab Meir says besula afilu miktsas besulim. Besula, if we would just say the simple word of besula, that a kohen should marry a besula, then I would say that even a partial psula is good enough. Like we saw over here, that Rab Meir holds regarding the money, that even partial ksuba that's being owed is like the full ksuba being owed, and she still could get mezainis. Over here, if we would only say besula, I would say even a partial besula is good enough for the kohen to marry. But a begeres is a partial psula because when she matures, she loses part of her besulim. Right? So, but now, what did the Torah write? Bisuleha. It didn't say besula. It says bisuleha, an extra yud there. Her besula. So for that I say ade ikke kulu besulam, that the kohen gadol could only marry until she's a full besula. Then there's an extra base there. The Torah writes bifsuleha. What does this mean? Bikedarka in shaloi kedarka loy. That the kohen could marry even if she had a relation with someone else, which is shaloi kedarka, not in the ordinary way. Only if it was kedarka that she had a relation with someone else, then the kohen gadol can't marry her. But if it was shaloi kedarka, the kohen could still marry her. This is the basis of Rab Meir's opinion. Rabbi Lazar, Rab Shimon Savri, Rabbi Lazar and Rab Shimon's opinion is besula shleima mashma. When it says in the Torah besula means that she has to be a complete besula. We do not compare miktsas besula to the full besula, similar to what Rab Shimon said before, that miktsas owing of the money is not the same like owing the full ksuba. But then the Torah writes bisuleha, that extra yud, and that comes to add a fila miktsas besulim. That even if she's a partial besula, even if she's a begeres, the kohen gadol could still marry her. And then when the Torah writes bivsuleha, the extra base, that comes to teach me shiyu kol besuleha kayamin. That comes to say that she has to be a full besula. What is this coming to say? Bein bit kedarka, bein shaloi kedarka, whether someone else had a relation with her in the ordinary way or not in the ordinary way, the kohen gadol would not be allowed to marry her. There is, the Gemara here is focusing on the partial besula, which is whether she's a begeres, whether the kohen gadol can marry her. But there's also another machlokes here regarding someone that had a relation with her, shaloi kedarka, which is connected to this. We had this in the Gemara in Yevamis. Over there, Rashi explained how these two details are connected to one another. Okay.